Here's our entire interview with Richie Furay, who's just released a brand new album. There are links in the description. Buffalo, Springfield, Poco, and many other projects. He talks about it all in this interview. Check it out. Listen, how did the live 50th album do? That's when the last time we talked. I was very excited about it. That's like an adventurous project for you.
It was really an adventure. The fact that, I was probably the only one out of the Poco group, that could actually maybe try to attempt to do the redo of Deliverin', because I sang, probably 95% of the songs. And then when I looked at the fact that, over the last 10 years, I probably played most of those songs, all but 3 of them, I think, somewhere at some time in my set. And so I said, I think we can do this. And so we went after it. And, it turned out really good. It was just a lot of fun. It was a good challenge and project. And I had a lot of time doing it. And I hope the people and the fans that have had a chance to hear it, I hope they like it. I've only seen good reports. You know how that goes.
I remember years ago, someone came up to me and they were playing Nobody's Fool. And the Eagles had come out by then. I think they were on their second album. And my old friend said, "Man, Nobody's Fool. The Eagles took that very groove. They took that damn groove, man. That's like the Eagles." And I'm going, I never really thought of it that way. And of course, there's always been those comparisons between those two bands. But no, go ahead.
We were the pioneers, and I was, I know what we accomplished in that whole regard, and whatever the Eagles, besides 2 bass players of mine that they took with them, what they've done a great job. And I just, somebody had to get out and turn up the fallow ground, man, to lead the way. And Poco is certainly one of the bands that did that.
With Rusty and Paul gone, what's the current state of I mean, I know that you're not in that band anymore, but is there a possibility that you'd go back, or they call you back, or is that just another chapter that's the door's closed now?
Yeah, for me, that door's obviously closed. There are some guys, I know Jack Sundred and Tom Hampton and some of the guys are doing another project. I think it's called 615 something. I'm not sure what it is, but they're doing another project and kind of carrying on some of at least Rusty's legacy. I don't know. I really don't know too much about it, John, but for me, man, my plate is absolutely full, and it's it's all I can do to keep up with what I can do. It's 78, man. Come on.
Isn't it okay? 78. I look at that, and I think I've told you before. I'm like, I think I was 61 the last time we talked. I'm 62 now. Oh. And I keep looking at the clock. I keep going, and I think I've told you before. I don't know, man. I've been in radio on my 40th year now, and I feel like I'm doing my best work.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm looking at you, especially when I was listening to the last project, the live. I listened to that. I'm going, man, he's on top of his freaking game. How do you feel about all this?
I'm excited that I'm still able to get out and do things, and I am doing things now at my. What I want to do. I'm not going out on tour for long stints of time. I'm just doing shows that I want to do really with my voice right now, man. Sometimes it's one and done.
Well, we don't, like I was getting up this morning and I'm going, what, if I don't move a lot during the sleep, if I don't have a drink of scotch at night, if I have a little drink, then I'm usually, I don't move as much, but I'm going, I feel it, but at the same time, you've got guys your own age and you see some of the guys. I mean, it's nurture or nature. There's no guarantees, even no matter if I know you didn't live the rock and roll lifestyle, but you never know what you got inside. Yeah. I mean,
absolutely. No, you're absolutely true. We don't know. And, we take each day at a time, and hopefully, we can continue on and just do what, we love to do in our hearts, and I love to make music. I'm so proud of the project that Val Garay and I did together. That's coming out here in a week or so, and I'm very happy that I can still do it. The thing that gets me with this project, is that we recorded it in November of 2019. And I mean, we recorded the basic tracks, and I got 90% of the lead vocals. Of course, Val had to tweak some of them, but then COVID hit, and bingo, here we are, 3 years, almost, well, 2.5 years later, and it's like, man, I wish I would have been a young guy when this thing got finished rather than an old guy like now, man.
Well, in the hands of Val Garay, yeah, no problem. Tell me about the project.
Had a blast doing it. Went to Nashville in 2019, and Val put together a really great band. I had a couple guys that I'd played with before, Chris Lusinger and Dan Dugmore, but he put together the rest of the band. One of the guys, Steve Nathan, came up to me after we recorded the Leanne Womack, I Hope You Dance. I played on the original of that. And so anyway, it was a challenge. And when Val and I talked about doing the project, I'm thinking, this sounds like a fun project to do. And when we got the list all together and the songs were, really selected and we chose them, my only thought at that point in time was, I'm doing songs now that other people have written and created and were big hit records. Are people going to look at the project that we have now in comparison, or are they just going to sit back and say, hey, this is pretty cool? Because what I did, John, was I put together like how you can put together your own little playlist of songs and stick it in your car. Well, that's what I did with these songs, man. I just made my own little playlist. And truthfully, I really think that we made the songs our own. I mean, there's not one of them that, we made them so that you knew that this is the song. It wasn't like listening to a Bob Dylan song that I had to say, wait a minute. Oh, I caught that lyric. I know what song that is now. So it was a really fun project. All the guys, we did 14 songs in 4 days. And it was quite strenuous, but and then as it unwound, we I would fly out to California to maybe do some background vocals or something, or meet up with Val to do some things. And we took our time. I wish it could have been more consistent in how it was released, but nobody knew what the parameters were going to be with this shutdown of everything.
How can people, where do they go? Because we're really good at this. We send them. I mean, you give me your time. I always make sure that during the interview, we always put it up and we do a little banner for it. And where can people get it?
Certainly, the record's going to be available everywhere. It's being released on BMG. And so, they have, ways of getting their projects and product out to all the stores. But you can go to richiefuray.com, and certainly I'll have the project available. It's coming out on vinyl on June 18th, and then I think it's July 8th or something like that. It's being released on every other format that you can imagine. But June 18th is record store day.
Yeah.
And so the vinyl is being released on that day.
Okay. I always look at, someone had said something. That's what I meant to say. Someone had said something in the last interview. We cut it up in pieces. Then we put the whole thing up on another channel. Went really well, did really well. But someone had said something, and I knew I'd talk to you again. He said, that guy's got real smile in his eyes. And I went, well, that's so nice.
Wow. I'll take that as a compliment.
And you know what he said? He's happy to be here. He says he seems like I said, you know what? You don't always get that with meeting your heroes. But I thought that was like an ultimate compliment of who you are as a human being,
Well, thank you very much. And whoever it was, I thank them too. And I am happy to be here. I know that, I've chosen the lifestyle that I wanted to do. And I actually dropped out of music for a number of years, before I started really making more music. And the fact that today, there are still people that will come out. They want to see my shows. I just talked to David Stone promoting the SOPAC show this Sunday coming up. And, it's virtually sold out. It's not a big theater, but it's almost 500 seats, and it's sold out, and people, the fact that people want to still come out and hear me perform and sing my history, and it's kind of cool because the history is still continuing. I mean, some of it hasn't even been released yet. So it's pretty humbling, but I'm happy and I'm thankful that people appreciate, what I've been able to do.
Yeah. Well, I always say if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't feel the same way. And I certainly probably wouldn't look the same way, because you got to fill your cup, man.
Yeah.
And I know you have multiple ways that we talked about your spirituality and your relationship with God a lot. A lot of people really appreciated that. Even the people who weren't Christians had said that, well, thanks you for asking something that would. I said, well, what do you mean? It's a big part of his life. How could I not ask that?
Yeah. Well, and I try, I want people to know that when I do concerts, I'm not there to proselytize. I'm not there to, hey, you better believe and think the way I do, or man, your life's in trouble. That's not it. But I am sharing my life. So I will let people know, listen, I love playing the music for you. I love playing Buffalo Springfield. I love playing Poco. I love playing Southern Human Fury. I love playing my solo music. But I want to tell you that the reason that I'm here is because God has given me a special gift to be able to share with you. And and then I'll play maybe a little worship song that I wrote years and years ago. And usually it's a song called Wake Up My Soul. And, it's non-threatening. It's bluegrass, and people can grab onto it. And,
what's that song mean to you? What's that song mean to you when you play that?
Well, Wake Up My Soul is like, it was from the Psalms. And David was basically, just really speaking about, just wake my soul up to the things that you have given me, Lord, and be thankful for that. And that's what I want to convey to the people. I'm thankful for what God has given me, that I'm still here, you're out there, and we can share this moment together.
Okay, let's just say you walk into a restaurant. Do people ever bug you? Do people ever come in? You're a very recognizable face. You have a very distinctive. I mean, to me, you've always looked like Richie Furay. I mean, I'd recognize you in a second. But do people? Are you in Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do people ever come up to you and ask you questions? If they do, what do they ask you? What's Neil Young like? What do they do?
Some people will do that, and they're very polite. I mean, come on. I'm not like Neil Young going into a restaurant or grocery store, or Timothy B. Schmidt. I mean, you can really pick those guys out of the crowd. But it's funny, man. I'll be, let's say I'm in the grocery store downtown, and I've lived here in Boulder for I don't know how many years now. I mean, since 1970, and I'll go in and I can tell when somebody. They kind of looked at me, and it's like they're not sure. I think I know that face. I think I know that guy. And sometimes they'll come up and because I'll look at them and I'll like kind of acknowledge them or something. And then a conversation might start. They're usually very polite. Some people just look and say, I can tell, though, the minute somebody thinks they've recognized, as soon as they recognize me, it's like, okay,
yeah.
What's on this guy's agenda?
I was listening to the first album, and I listening to What a Day earlier today, and I hadn't listened to it since I think maybe the last time I listened to that, and I go, I just finished talking about Jim Seals, who passed away.
Yeah, I just saw that from John today. Yeah.
And I used to think, and he's there from the Baha'i faith. I went to their concert. They talk about their faith, and I just want to get close to them. But it was nice what they said, and that's all good. But one thing I said when I was doing the tribute to it, and I thought of that when I was listening to What a Day. I'm going, Seals and Cross music made me feel good. My first program director used to say, yeah, I know it's got the hooks, but how does it make you feel? See, I listened to I listened to What a Day, and I'm going, that just brings me to a nice place, and thank you.
Isn't that cool? I love it, man. And that is one song that I think on Buffalo Springfield box set that was released, I don't know how many years ago now, but at one point in time, Stephen actually sang it. And it just really did my heart good. I mean, I'm used to singing his songs or singing Neil's songs or whatever. But to have Stephen sing that song, because he did a version of it. And so, but it's a good morning and I'm feeling fine. and it's great.
I like this. I mean, that whole album, you still get, there's that crossroads between that old psychedelic world, which was very prevalent. I think it was Jack Tempchin who told me, says, oh God, the 60s weren't done in the 70s. In the early 70s, you're hearing so much influence, and it never really stopped. It thinned out a little bit. But I always found that was true, that the 60s didn't end in the 60s. There was still, that vibe was going on.
Oh, for sure it did. Springfield got started in 65? And we carried that right on, to when, we broke up in 69. Basically, I'm moving on into another era, but I'm taking with what I have and putting it into the new project, into the new agenda for music for me.
You had said before, I read a long interview you'd done with a gentleman, and you said that, well, you guys had shared the bill with the Doors and a whole bunch of other folks of the ilk. And you said, and I would think that maybe, I always, being a big Doors fan, you had said that he just seemed a little weird, Jimmy, because if you read the books, he acted a little out there an awful lot. He didn't suffer fools, but the thing is, he was his own man. But it didn't mean that, if you come in school in 72 with purple hair, you're going to get reactions. He didn't have purple hair, but he was his own man and did his own thing.
There was something, and I'll use the word interesting. Yeah, people can interpret that word the way they want. And I didn't know Jim. If we would have probably passed on the street, even though we played music together at the Whiskey, and I know we were at some parties together out in L.A. in the 60s, mid 60s there. But Jim was an interesting guy. There's just no way about it. What guy could I go into the Whiskey when he was playing and we were going on next, but I'm looking up there and I'm looking for the guy singing and I can't find him. I can see guitar, I can see the drums, I can see the keyboard, but where's this guy singing? He's not behind it. He's laying on top of the amplifiers. And he's just weird. And, like I say, I didn't know Jim. If he carried that into his lifestyle later on, we weren't socially involved in any way. I don't know, but he definitely had a quirk about him.
Do you look back at those times? These people always say that sometimes I'll interview people say, John, you look pissed off. So I'm just really serious and I'm really intrigued, but I don't get starstruck by talking to people. I just have a lot of admiration for the people I grew up with, you being a big one. And so I don't get starstruck in that way because that way I get the best stuff. I got to be cool. I'm a radio guy. I've learned to be cool. Backstage introducing a band, you got to be cool. You can't go, oh, Richie Furay, you're the great. I can't do that because it'll make you feel uncomfortable and everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. But looking back at that time, did you know you were in the middle of something? To like a guy like Jimmy Morrison or even Hendrix or any one of those people, Janis Joplin, to you, was that just a cohort in music that did interesting things, or did you ever get starstruck at all with other people?
I think I looked at them as I appreciated, what they were doing. I might not have been fans of their music or their style. It's like going to Monterey, the Monterey Pop Festival. And man, that had an array. From Otis Redding to The Who, to Jimi Hendrix, to Janis Joplin, to Buffalo Springfield, to, just so many. And it's like, I could appreciate, the music. I always, I can't say I was a fan of Janis Joplin, but boy, man, was I drawn to what she did, and the way that, you could sense there was a certain feeling being expressed in her life and her heart as she was singing those songs. And I think that was so important. That's how somebody captures, the audience. And so I as far as us looking at, did we know things were happening at the time? When we started playing, when Buffalo Springfield started playing the Whiskey Go-Go, nobody came. There was the regular crowd that just, happened to be at the Whiskey that night because it was a scene. But by the time we finished we played there, I think, as the house band, along with the Doors and Love and the Lees, and for almost 6 weeks. By the end of our stint, they were wrapped around the block, and so that certainly Yeah, there's something happening here.
By the way, was it Graham Parsons that told you about the first, in that interview? I also saw, did he come and tell you about the first Byrds album? Because obviously, eventually, Sweethearts of the Rodeo, he was.
What happened? I was working up at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft after that first little band that Stephen and I were in, the Go-Go Singers. And I, when that broke up, it kind of put okay, now what? I just don't know what I want to do. I had a girlfriend. I thought, well, look, she lives up there in Massachusetts, really close to Connecticut. I'll go up there and work, maybe stay with them. And so one of the girls that was in the Go-Go Singers was the family that I lived with, and it was her sister. But Graham, who lived across the street from me on Thompson Street, he came up with the Byrds' first record in hand, and he said, "You got to hear this." And that's when it was like, oh my man, I gotta get a hold of Stephen. I gotta find out what he's doing. I know he had already left New York. He was on his way to California. And so, but when I heard that first Byrds record, so this was, when Graham brought that up, I mean, Sweetheart of the Rodeo was still down the road a little bit, but when I heard that first record, man, it was like, oh my goodness, here we are hearing Dylan, man, with electric music and this and that and the other. And it's like, wow, man, and harmonies. And little did I know how integral a part David Crosby and Chris Hillman would actually play in Buffalo Springfield early days, getting us the job at the Whiskey A Go-Go, actually going on tour, doing several shows with them in the Southern California area. Little did I know that these guys, man, that Graham brought this record, that they would become our friends. And that's the way the community was. That's how the community was in Los Angeles at the time. I mean, it was like, it was awesome.
You touched on it, formerly in Buffalo Springfield. So was that an arduous task? It was basically you and Stephen.
In the beginning?
Yeah, because you had said that it was his band, but you were.
It was definitely Stephen's band. I mean, Stephen was the heart and soul of Buffalo Springfield. I think because of Neil's notoriety, and what even though Stephen had a very recognizable career himself, and all, but Neil went off as a solo artist, and a lot of people really identify maybe the Springfield with Neil, that guy with the fringe and a little eccentric and this and that and the other, but Stephen was the heart. It was his band, there's no other way for me to look at it. Now we're going to do an interview together in a couple of weeks, man. Stephen and Neil and I. So I hope that. Oh, what do you mean saying it was?
Who are you doing it with? Who are you doing it with?
Actually, Cameron Crowe is he's gonna do the interview. Stephen and I have already done one. It's for the documentary that I also have coming out next year. And Stephen and I have done one. Neil was going to participate in that, and then something happened, and it just fell apart. But Stephen and I went ahead and did it by Zoom and all. But now we're going to, I think on July 14th or something like that, we're going to get together out at Stephen's house. And all three of us, along with Cameron, are going to do that interview for the documentary. So it'll be fun. I mean, it'll be a lot of fun. Stephen and I had a great time doing, I think it was really important as the way things came down, because Stephen and I had our own personal relationship. And then when you add in, Neil, well, Stephen and Neil have their own personal relationship, and it might have taken away a little bit from, what Stephen and I had together. So this will be fun though.
With someone asked me to ask you last time, and I forgot, and I don't get political ever on my channel, but does the fact that Stephen obviously leans differently than you do, you guys don't talk about politics, do you? Or you don't talk that much with Neil Young, right?
It's never been an issue.
Yeah.
Never, ever been an issue. I do believe that that he's been obviously more politically inclined and vocal over the years than I have. I was like talking to someone the other day. Listen, I'm the guy that writes love songs. I don't know where songs like "Don't Tread on Me" or "Wind of Change" and "Someday" on my on the last project that I did. I don't know where all that came from, but no, you know what? We have learned to respect each other for who we are as we identify with one another through the music. Yeah,
well said. I wish, like I said, people are always asking me questions about politics. I'm going, do you come here for politics? Do you come to my channel for politics? And I said, I'd rather talk about theology. I like theology. I'm intrigued by theology. I love it. And I love that people connect to whoever brought us here. That to me, how can you disagree with that? Because it inspires music. It inspires so many great things. Oh yeah, Good Time Boy, you wrote, but Dewey sang. What happened there? Well, I know you had 2 songs there right in a row.
You know, when Dewey joined the band, he said, yeah, man, I want to join the band, but I want to sing a song too. I sing like Wilson Pickett. That's what he said, I remember. And, you know, as the second album, you know, came out, that was the first album that I actually had any songs on at all. And I did Sad Memory, and I think Child's Claim to Fame, and Good Time Boy. And I just kind of wrote that as say, Dewey, here's a song, man. Why don't you get gotcha.
Yeah, and
Dewey was a good guy, man. I miss him. He was a good guy and a good friend.
I like the way he drummed. I mean, that to me, that was, yeah.
You know, John, it was something like I'm not sure any of us in the band. I think, you know, musicianship and all really developed, but in the beginning, it wasn't like we were the best, you know, musicians in the world. Stephen was just learning his style at the time, which he developed. Neil had a ragged style, and they kind of, put it, but you know, the band, that's what made it. It was just like one of those things. Bruce was a unique bass player. I mean, a very unique bass player and fun to play with. But Dewey, man, he was like a Ringo Starr drummer, man.
He was, yes. I never thought of that.
Just a real basic, you know, I don't have to be fancy. I'm just here to carry the time, you know, and so as the band is like, you know, we might not have been the greatest musicians in the world, but whatever it was, it all fit. It just fit. It worked.
Garrett Luchowski wrote, were any of the Buffalo Springfield shows in 2010 professionally recorded before Neil pulled out of the tour? And if so, any chance of releasing them?
I'm sure everything was recorded. I mean, I'm not sure. I know everything was recorded, and they're all in Neil's possession. So I guess when Neil's ready to release them, if ever, you know, they will be.
Do you have any old songs that you haven't touched maybe in 40 years? Do you still have, and 2-part question, 2 parts. And have you kept notes about stuff? I mean, the documentary is coming up. I mean, obviously the calendar pages in your head are going back. Do you have old songs, and did you keep notes back then, or journals or anything?
Didn't keep any journals, any notes, you know, each day as it was. And as far as old songs, you know, I've never been what I would call a prolific writer. And so basically, I mean, I know I've got little bits and pieces of things, but nothing that I would call a song. But I got, you know, songs I look forward to as I write, you know. So I'm still, even at this day, I'm still writing songs, you know. And so it's more looking this way rather than picking up back there.
You know, talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to a guy who is 30 years younger, because, you know why? Because I talk to guys who, they come up with a word. I'm 62, like I told you. And sometimes I'll go to say something on live. I do a lot of live feeds, and the word just ain't there. You know, it could be a word like hammer, but you've really, I know you didn't abuse your body when you were younger because you weren't the partying type, but man to man, I got to say, congratulations. Good for you. Because that will keep you going for years.
I short circuit, man. I hear beep, 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 beep go off a lot, you know, in my head, you know, and I can't get that out. Nancy, help me. What word am I trying to think of here?
Someone had asked I've always been with women with grit. I've always had women with grit in my life. They're tough. They've challenged me. I'm not sure why I chose that, but that's, and certainly my current wife is that way. But I've also been in business with people with grit, and I don't have grit. I like to be called on my crap. Has there been someone in your career that's been the most challenging, that you know, your personality, not that they're wrong, but most challenging that because you're an apple and they're an orange. So we're not saying they're wrong, but has there been someone like that? I know you're trying to be
Probably.
diplomatic. You're trying to be diplomatic.
I am. I'm trying to think of the words how to say that. Probably Jimmy. Probably Jimmy Messina.
Yeah. He was a very interesting interview. I found that he was very he remembered dates like no one I remember. Mind you, he did get what's that?
No, go ahead.
No, he did, and he was just a very different fellow. I mean, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing against the guy, but I found his interview. He was just very meticulous the way he,
That's Jimmy. I mean, meticulous in the studio. Meticulous. I mean, between the two of us, when we were rehearsing Poco at first, because both of us like to, be obviously prepared, that we don't have to think about when we go on stage what we're doing, as far as musically. But Jimmy was very meticulous with rehearsals, and that's his style. But that's exactly how he is, but that's not where we had, whatever we were talking about before.
Stephen Miller writes, "Hi, thanks for the opportunity to ask Richie a question. As a 45-year-old fan, a long fan, I've enjoyed all the music and just pre-ordered in the country. My question is, does Richie plan on releasing any Christian-themed music in the future? Thanks from Steve."
I never want to say never. For the last several years, I've just been focused on this project, and yes, I have thought about maybe doing another. I have really two in my father's house, and I am sure that I like to call devotional. People say Christian, but you know what, man? That's just who I am as a person. I'm a Christian, and so my music is just my music. If they're thinking, this person is thinking more of devotional focus, I thought about it, and I just haven't really set back to do it at this point in time. Probably it may come out later on, but again, man, at this age, good golly, man. I mean, it's like.
Oh, I think you got some more albums in there, man. Jim Gordon, someone asked, any fond memories of Jim Gordon?
Man, Jimmy, what a guy. I mean, just one of the greatest drummers that he was like such a musician. I can't even tell you that. And to be having him go on the road with JD and Chris and me and with Paul and Al, oh gosh, it was just wonderful. And what a sad story, because Jimmy, I remember at one concert, I don't know where we were playing, but Jimmy had decided, somebody came along and offered him something, before a show. And all of a sudden we're doing this song. It was one of my songs. It was a song called Believe Me. And, it had a nice little groove to it. And all of a sudden, man, it was like a train stopping. And I'm like, where are we going here with this now, Jimmy? I look back, man, and it had overtaken him, And Jimmy had a way of abusing himself in that way, I mean, he just had issues there, and he just couldn't say no. But when he was when he was sober, straight, whatever you want to say, you couldn't have met a nicer. He was a big teddy bear. You'd love him. But there was those moments, that he had when that wasn't the case, and I feel very bad about that, But yeah.
What do you tell someone like the man you are today? What do you tell someone if that person would come up to you and say, "Richie, I need help. What do I do? Why do I got this monkey on my," or whatever cliche you want to put in there? But what do you tell someone like that?
Well, first of all, I mean, I want to find out, where their faith is and what they stand for, and are you, because I can't help them if my help in a situation that a person is in a crisis situation comes from the scripture, period. It's not, Richie, what can I tell them? But here's what I can tell you from the word. And so I have to find out, where they stand. Do they have a believing faith or not? And once we get after that, then it's easier to go to a position, or here's solid. These words are not my words. These are words that are divinely inspired, and go from there.
When you were at the pulpit, was that something you had to, was that part of the job if someone,
Oh,
would
absolutely.
you counsel? Yeah, you would.
Absolutely. Really. Yeah, it was. And it's probably, it's very satisfying when you see someone that can actually drink in and listen and hear what you're saying or what and then on the other hand, it's very disheartening, when you'll sit there. Oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I know that. I know. What are we doing sitting here? If I'm sharing something with them, because of here's what their issue is. And plus, if they've already, they've been a believer or whatever, and I'm sharing with them. Well, yeah, I know that. Well, yeah, I know that. Well, yeah, I know that. Well, then I remember the first time that I needed some help. Nancy and I we'd been married for 7 years, and we separated. We've been married for 55 years now, so it's kind of worked out. But I remember going to counseling out at Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa, California, and one of the pastors came in to talk to me. I had a good friend, Keith Ritter, who helped. He was helping me. He was my go-to guy. And he would have all the pastors at Calvary come through, and kind of give me little words of encouragement. Well, this one guy was Pastor Chuck Smith's right-hand guy, and he was a Marine sergeant. And he came in and he said, the 23rd Psalm? And I said, I'd been a Christian maybe 6 months, yeah. Well, what's it say? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Well, then what's the matter with you?
Oh my God!
That was it, man. I mean, and it was the truth. It was harsh, but it was the truth and loving. The Lord, David said, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want." And he said, "Well, then what's the matter with you?"
Randy Meisner. When's the last time you talked to Randy?
Randy came to the Troubadour when we did the 50th anniversary of Deliverance. And it was so special because not only was Randy there, but Timothy was there. And so my two special bass players were right there at the same time. We got some photos together. Truthfully, John, I hadn't talked to Randy in a long time. And seeing him, Randy's health is, he's got some issues and struggling and all, but the fact that he came was really so cool. And I know that Timothy was glad to see him at the same time. And it was just a really great evening. I have since, done a couple little back porch things and had Randy, do some parts on it. So, it was good. I love it when I can see somebody, and if I haven't seen them for a while, even if we had issues or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, wow. And we just, all we want to do is hug each other and, hey, man, it is so good to see you. And that's just how it was, man.
Well, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And that stuff was big at the time, but you were all young. Yeah. And it's not, and you're older now, and it's really small.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. And, like with Randy, it was. And, Timothy and I have an ongoing relationship anyway. He's been such a good, close friend. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to check.
I mean, that's how it should be.
That's how it should be.
We shouldn't be, what I want to say, we have poured very sensitive parts of our life into creating something, most people don't get to do that. We shared the God-given talent and gifts that he's given us, and that's a very spiritual thing in and of itself. And we should recognize that and appreciate one another, for who they are and what they are. I know when Paul Cotton and I were working together, because we were young, and I brought Paul into the band, and loved him. But we did not have the relationship that we had later on in years when we were playing together, I don't know whether it was, well, there's competition here or there's this or that and the other, but in later years, man, it was just like, man, that's so good to see you, and and let's go play together. And I took him out with me on tour a couple times, and it was all good. But that's how it should be, man. At this age, my gosh, man, let the U-Haul go, man. That stuff let that stuff unhitch that thing, man, and put it on the side of the road.
Someone had told me years ago, competition breeds itself in young bones. It just does. It's like piss and vinegar, Yeah. I love the live album. That long intro on A Long Way Home, Buffalo Springfield Days. Why didn't Neil Young sing his own songs in the early days?
I don't know. That was, I was brought into the band to be a singer, and maybe they thought I was a lead singer, and I didn't have any songs on the first album. And I think there was some question. So the story goes, and I never heard the story, but Neil has a unique voice. And I'm not sure that maybe some of the people in charge, whether it was management or whether it was from the record company, they felt, well, this voice maybe doesn't have the appeal, and so we'll let this guy sing. And so I sang, on the very first album, I sang 3 songs, and happy to do it, and loved the songs. They were great songs. I got to say, I didn't understand all of nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing, but Neil taught me that back in New York. And one of the reasons, that maybe some of this happened too was from us, because when Stephen and I got together, I actually shared that song with him, even though he had another relationship with Neil, meeting him in Canada as he was working his way to California. And so when we were with that little thing on Sunset Boulevard there at Ben Frank's and all, and took him over to the house, well, one of the songs that we had, Stephen and I had been rehearsing, was Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing. And so that was probably an impetus to Neil to say, hey, this is pretty cool, I'll join the band.
Is it a known fact that you like Westerns? Because this next question insinuates that you like Westerns. Do you like Westerns?
Yeah.
Steve Tustin writes, ask him if David told him about the Western movie we would like him to be part of. Does that make any sense? Steve, I don't know. Okay.
But there was some old guy just can't talk well.
No way, man. You still got it.
Yeah, In the Country. I can't tell you how proud I am of this record. It was a blast to make, and to work with Val again was just, it was just so special. This guy's 2 years older than me. We were born on the same day, 2 years apart. And, we recorded I Still Have Dreams in 1979 together. And so we hadn't done another project. And when he came and said that you want to do this, I was very happy to do it. And I'll tell you what, Val has some of the best ears. I mean, this album sonically, and where my voice, it's like sometimes the voice gets lost in a band project. And when I first heard some of his mixes, I said, man, Val, I love where you put the voice. He said, this is a Richie Furay record. It's not a Richie Furay band record. And there it was. And so the voice is right out front. Like I said, man, I got probably 90% of the tracks live, because I was singing when the band was going down. And there was tweaks on it, but what a fun project. So I hope people will take a listen to In the Country. All of the songs will be familiar, except for maybe one song on there, maybe a song by Buddy Miller or Julie Miller actually wrote it, called Chalk. And it was just a song that I heard that was very special to me, and it closes out the album. Other than that, great songs, man.
What kind of a person is Val Garay as opposed to other people behind the console that you've worked with? I'll compare him to maybe John Macy, because I've done so much work with John Macy, and I love working with John. John is one of those very easy-going guys. When Val gets his mind set on something, he knows what he wants, and there's no way you're going to distract him from moving away from that. And that's really one. I don't look at that as a negative trait. I look at it, man, this guy knows what he wants, and he hears what he wants to hear. He'll take your input. Obviously, it's your record, Richie. And so when you hear what blah 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 and all, but boy, when like mainly in mixing, when he's mixing something,
he's like focused. And so works out real good, man.